Eli Tomac extends his championship lead while everybody else in the pack seems to suffer problems. I'm Tyler Deering, and welcome to Gate Drop News. What's going on, guys? My name is Tyler Deering, back with another episode of GDN. We saw a wild night of racing in Detroit. Jet Lawrence came out and smoked the 250 field as he has been doing. Eli Tomac extended his championship lead in the 450 class, but the story of the night was the problems that happened in the second half of the main event. Let's get right into it with the 250 main results. Jet Lawrence comes out on top. He did not get the whole shot. That honor went to Styles Robertson. Robertson ran very well, but was unable to hold off the pack. He finished further down the order. But really, once Jet Lawrence grabbed the lead, there wasn't a whole lot going on in the pack. Cameron McAdoo did not get a great start. He came out around 8th-ish. He rode up kind of in that 8th to 6th place most of the night. Came home second, though. Finished very well. Rode through the pack with a lot of speed. He didn't have anything for Jet. I think even if they started around the same slot out of the first turn, I think Jet was still going to ride away with it. But what usually happens with those two is when they battle, that's when you see Jet get really aggressive, maybe push the bike a little bit too hard, kind of force the issue, and then make mistakes. So I think that if McAdoo was up there was a chance that it could have been a better fight, but this one, Jet ran away with it, kind of similar to what we saw in Minneapolis. Rounding out the podium was Pierce Brown in third. He looked like he might contend for the race win, but he kind of faded towards the end of it, didn't quite have the stamina. RJ Hampshire came home fourth with Jordan Smith in fifth. 8th place was Styles Robertson. He had the whole shot, but just faded. I don't know if it was stamina, bike problem. He did not look as good. Enzo Lopes had to go to the LCQ after having a bike malfunction in his heat race. He brings it home in a top 10. Still a great ride for Lopes. He didn't even get a great start in this main event, but you just saw him in timing and scoring slowly working up the ladder. So awesome to see a guy on the Club MX team doing well. Lopes has definitely carried the banner for that team. He's run very well. Tonight wasn't quite his night. He did get beat by Phil Nicoletti, but Nicoletti had an awesome night as well. It was a pretty good night for that team, and look for Lopes to keep moving forward, keep progressing, and maybe move up to an even faster team at season's end. We won't spend too much time on this main event because we want to get to the 450s, but Kyle Chisholm comes home 10th on his debut with Star Racing Yamaha. Chisholm looked okay in the heat race, nothing too flashy, but for a guy that's never really had factory speed underneath him, it wasn't surprising that he wasn't immediately contending for race wins. Chisholm was running well inside the top 10 when he had a problem with his bike. It was unclear if he stalled the bike or if the bike let go for a brief second. But after that, Chisholm had lost valuable time and was unable to make it up. Either way, it was not the debut that Chisholm was looking for, as he will need to fight back in the following rounds to prove to Star Racing that this was indeed a worthwhile pickup. Point standings for the 250 East are still very tight because McAdoo is managing to scrape out these podiums, and honestly is allowing Jet to not run away with it. It's only an 8-point gap between the two after 4 races, even though Jet has had some dominating performances. McAdoo, I think, has accepted that he might not be the fastest guy every night, a strategy that we saw Austin Fortner try to display before he got taken out. But for McAdoo, if he can just keep rattling off those second-place finishes, maybe even third-place finishes, it puts him in a position to attack would something happen to Jet Lawrence. Anyway, let's move on to the 450 class because, man, did we see some carnage. Eli Tomac grabs the win, but he was far from it in the first turn. While I'm not sure if Justin Bogle was officially credited with the whole shot, he was the one out front at the end of the first lap, and he held it for multiple laps before eventually getting overtaken and falling down the order. Bogle comes from 8th, and for a Suzuki bike, that's the best you were going to see. Yes, there was a lot of carnage in front of him, but give credit to Bogle for a decent finish. But the main story of the night was Eli Tomac cruising to victory as everybody behind him seemed to suffer some kind of massive accident. The race was pretty calm as Jason Anderson surrendered the lead to Tomac about halfway through the race. Anderson lost touch with him, caught back up, looked like he was going to pass him. All of a sudden, with about 8 minutes left in the race, it was mayhem on the track. It originally started with Cooper Webb and Chase Sexton getting into a little scuffle as Webb cased a triple. Sexton, nowhere to go, ran over the back of him. Let's take a quick look at this terrible accident.
Cooper Webb comes up short, he cases Cooper Webb. I think Cooper Webb got confused where he was in the rhythm section. He came out of that.
This wasn't Sexton's first crash of the night. He dumped it earlier in the heat race from the lead, Somehow he wasn't injured. He landed on the tough blocks, but unfortunately this one did damage to him as well as Cooper Webb. Sexton nowhere to go. This one not his fault in the slightest. Lands on Cooper Webb, who comes up short, knocks Cooper Webb to the ground, knocks himself to the ground as well, and Sexton's rear tire, still rotating from the fall, clips his shoulder, shredding his jersey and tearing his back apart. It was a gruesome wreck to watch, especially as Sexton laid motionless on the ground. Webb, looking like he was in a ton of pain, managed to get up and ride around the track for multiple laps trying to conserve points. Now look, I've got the Ken Roczen jersey on the wall here, so obviously I might not be the most fond of Cooper Webb, but I was so impressed with the grit that he showed tonight. Webb was in so much pain he couldn't put his hand onto the handlebars even just for support, yet he managed 3 laps around a Supercross track. That is some grit, that is some toughness. Even if you're not the biggest fan of Cooper Webb, man, he impressed me tonight. That was a warrior-like performance. But the action didn't stop there. Literally 30 seconds after that accident, the camera panned to Jason Anderson on the ground looking dazed. The replay eventually showed that he had dumped it over the start-finish line jump, going down in what didn't look like a bad fall, but knocking his head in a way that likely resulted in a concussion. Anderson was slow to get back to his feet, and by the time he had remounted his Kawasaki and tried to go through the rhythm section, he looked completely unstable as he fell off the bike for a second time, and by that point the cameras had found him with the Alpine Stars medical team there to deliver aid. Anderson immediately took off his helmet and made no attempt to rejoin the race, and he should not have because he was clearly not in his right mind. The Anderson incident was followed by a camera shot of Dylan Ferrandis holding what looked to be his right hand. No confirmation yet if it was shoulder or hand, but either way, Ferrandis didn't finish the race. He left early with his mechanic. It was a crazy 2 minutes. No footage was shown of Ferrandis. We'll see if we can find that during the week to show you guys. That'll be on the Instagram. But man, it just seemed like everybody was going down. And then to top it all off, Marvin Musquin in a battle comes around the corner, leans the front end over. The track conditions were interesting. They were sticky in some parts and extremely slick in others. And Musquin found one of the slick ones, fell down. His visor was already on the back of his helmet from an earlier incident. He falls down. The visor actually covers his face. He tries to rip it off angrily and spends, 5 to 10 seconds fighting with it before he could even get it off. Eventually kind of gets it off to one side and kept going. He rebounded to finish 4th. Even though he was off the bike for several seconds messing with his visor in a cartoon-like fashion, he comes home 4th. That shows you what kind of night it was. Malcolm Stewart was quiet all night, but comes home 2nd after all of the carnage. He was your fastest qualifier, and he won a heat race. Just didn't get the start on pace. He was close to the top guys, but just didn't quite get the start. Still a good finish, but I think everybody's too far back in the championship. We'll talk about that later. Justin Barcia comes home 3rd. His finger was so messed up on the broadcast. He had like 7 stitches. I mean, he looked like a zombie is what he said on the podium. And he brought it home 3rd. Didn't even know if he was going to race tonight. 4th, Musquin. 5th, Brayton. 6th, Vince Freezy. What is this top 10? Shane McElrath 7th. Bogle 8th. Brandon Hartwith comes home 9th with Cade Clayson 10th. I mean, the list just goes on and on. Ryan Brees 11th, Justin Starling 12th. I just want to give some love to these guys. It's cool to see them up there, even though there was a lot of carnage that had to happen. It's so cool to see these guys run up front. That said, the championship battle was almost decided tonight. Tomac takes a 42-point lead over both Jason Anderson and Malcolm Stewart into round 11 of 17. Realistically, for Eli to surrender this lead, he would either have to DNF or miss multiple rounds, which technically, even with COVID, could happen. I don't think it will. I think Eli's pretty much got this in the bag. That is not a hot take by any stretch of the imagination, but he's been the fastest guy and he's kept it on 2 wheels. But looking forward, man, I've been so impressed with Malcolm Stewart. Even if he hasn't had the pace, the name of the game with Supercross is staying on 2 wheels. And even though he's had a couple practice crashes here and there, like everybody does, Stewart finds a way to finish races, and that sets him up well long-term. He's got more of a long-term deal with Husky, so maybe next year he comes out, keeps it together, runs very well, maybe gets some race wins. We'll see, but I've been very impressed with him thus far. But anyway, guys, crazy night of racing in Detroit. Prayers go out to those that suffered crashes tonight. We had a lot of them. We hope for a little bit better, cleaner racing next time. Obviously, we don't want to see anybody get hurt. But that said, it was certainly interesting to watch. I mean, in the span of 2 minutes, you had probably 5 storylines to cover. So for me, that was helpful. Hopefully the racing is a little bit cleaner next time. We definitely want to see these guys on the line each and every weekend. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Gate Drop News, for more live updates and breaking news stories. Thank you guys so much for your time as always, and I will see y'all in the next video.